stuff on guilt and shame and how trauma plays in. So.
Oh, excellent. So, well, so my, oh, shoot, I'm going to mute because I got a little situation. So you start and you're recorded and I'm going to stop my video and mute.
Okay, I consent to being recorded. Had to click a button. Weird. Hi, everybody. I am not Kelley Gunter, as you can well see. I'm going to try and, she talks about trauma, so I'm going to talk a little bit about trauma, but I wanted to start out, what I really want to talk about is negative core beliefs, which are the underlying beliefs that drive our addiction. But I'll start, I'm going to back up to guilt and shame. And some of you have probably heard me talk about this before, you know, the difference between guilt and shame. If you've read Brene Brown, you know this already, but let's talk about it anyway. Guilt and shame are not the same thing. We used to have, like the old Bradshaw language was shame and toxic shame. But all shame is toxic. Guilt is what he was calling shame, and shame is what he was calling toxic shame. So the new language is guilt and shame. So guilt is a healthy and a necessary sense that we violated our moral code, that we violated our values, that we stepped on somebody's toes, and we feel badly about it. Guilt exists in a system of accountability and respect for other people and for ourselves. So, you know, I made a mistake, I did a bad thing, my behavior was hurtful. That's guilt. Shame is a sense of being a failure as a person. Never feeling as if we're quite good enough, feeling doubt about ourselves. Just got the text asking me to come on this. So shame, it's about I'm not good enough, I'm a terrible person. You know, I feel at my very core that there's something wrong with me. I'm constantly humiliated. I'm not embarrassed, I'm humiliated. I'm not struggling, I'm discouraged. I'm not working to make things better, I'm in despair. It's a very different feeling than guilt. There's something wrong with me as a person. That's shame. Instead of I made a mistake, which is guilt, I am a mistake. That's shame. You know, I did a bad thing, I am bad. That's shame. My behavior was hurtful. I am a terrible person and all I do is hurt people. You know, notice the difference in languaging there. Guilt is, as I said, it's a healthy emotion and it motivates change. If I feel like, oh, I made a mistake, I don't want to make that mistake again. And I do want to make amends to whoever I've hurt, including myself sometimes. That's guilt. I feel guilty about what I did. I don't want to do it again. You know, guilt motivates us to change. Shame is quicksand. Shame, if I think I'm a bad person and there's nothing that can be done about that, why would I bother changing? I'm a terrible person. I do terrible things. You know, that's why I'm an addict. That's why I behave badly. That's, you know, why I robbed the gas station to pay for my addiction. You know, I'm just a bad person, and there's no way out of this. So it just keeps us stuck. Guilt motivates change. Shame keeps us stuck. Both of these things, well, shame in particular, but both of these things can come from trauma, and shame almost always comes from trauma. You know, we have some sources of shame. There's what we call inherited or generational shame. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but family secrets, trauma that happened to your family or your community, often before you were born. You know, my favorite example of this inherited generational shame, this is a friend of mine in recovery. When he was about 9 or 10 years old, his parents were celebrating like their 12th anniversary. And he had an older brother who was like 16, and he did some quick math and realized that, you know, his older brother maybe wasn't his older brother. So he asked his mom, and she kind of sat him down and said, okay, when I was 15, I got pregnant and I had your brother. And then several years later, your dad came along and he married me and he adopted your brother. And then we had you. And the next thing out of her mouth was, never speak of this again. This was this inherited generational shame about something that happened before he was born, but he had always felt like something was a little off in the family. This is what we call inherited shame. There's external shame. This is the main cause of shame for addicts. Trauma that happened to us directly as we grew up. It can be neglect, it can be physical abuse, it can be sexual abuse, it can be, teachers just shaming us in class, oh, you're terrible at math, or our parents shaming us. So this is what the shame that we get, most of us, that drives our addiction. And then we also have cultural shame. This is, Asian kids often feel like, they're supposed to play the violin and be good at math. I mean, Margaret Cho walks on stage in her comedy act, and the first thing out of her mouth is, I don't play violin. And the whole audience cracks up because she's supposed to play violin. She's Chinese or Korean, I think. And I probably got that wrong. I apologize if I did. But so there's a lot of cultural shame. And, in my personal family, I was expected to be good at sports and make good grades. My sister was expected to be pretty. And she has shame because she was quite intelligent, but there was never any expectation that she would make good grades. So she didn't have to. And she carries this shame about, her brother was pushed to do really well with academics and she was ignored with academics. It was almost a neglect kind of shame for her. This is a cultural shame because she was female. She had different expectations that really didn't fit who she was as a person. She's quite intelligent. She made terrible grades in high school and college, but now she's a nurse, and she worked for American Airlines, and she was in charge of training all of the flight attendants for a huge airline. This is a very intelligent, successful woman who carries this shame around, like, I can't do that. Her constant response is, I can never do that. I can never overcome that challenge. And it's a cultural shame that she was saddled with. So we all have these shame things, and they lead to core beliefs. I have a core belief. My mother told basically, I am not allowed to have feelings. That's number one. I'm good at everything, but I'm never good enough. That's a core belief. And if you knew the real me, you would run screaming from the room because I'm a horrible, horrible person. That's a core belief. Some of the core beliefs, we mostly have sex and porn addicts and love addicts on here. So core beliefs, I just want to talk about these real quick, and you guys can think about them and maybe put something in the chat feature, ask some questions. First one is, I am a bad, unworthy, defective person. Almost every addict has that core belief. It comes from our trauma, it comes from our shame. We're not born with the belief that we are bad and unworthy and defective. We develop this belief through external factors. We are taught to believe that. No one could ever love me as I am. This is a big one for sex, porn, and love addicts. We think we are unlovable. We're defective. This is a shame-based belief that comes from our trauma. We think that no one could ever love us. So we chase, fleeting moments of connection. Sex and porn addiction and even love addiction, are not lasting connections. They're more about intensity than connection. Or we can turn to alcohol to escape our desire for connection because we feel like we could never get the connection. So rather than pursuing a healthy connection, we pursue escape from our need. My needs will never be met by others. Oh, Lordy. If you grow up in a house where there's addiction or mental illness, or one of your siblings has special needs, you're never going to get the attention that you need as a child growing up. So you are going to learn in your head, my needs will never be met by others. So rather than trying to get your needs met in healthy ways through healthy connections, lasting intimacy, we turn to an addiction as an escape. And then this last one is really specific to sex addicts and also porn addicts. Sex is my most important need. This is how we get validation. And this is a shame-based kind of validation. I need external validation. If you want me that way, I must be enough. I must be not quite as bad as I think I am. I must be not quite as horrible as I think I am. If you will validate me sexually for 15 minutes, that will boost my self-esteem enough to keep me going until the next time I need to act out. Trauma leads to shame. Shame leads to these distorted core beliefs, and these distorted core beliefs lead to addiction. This is how we get here. We end up on this webinar because we experienced trauma. It turned into shame. We developed these horrendous, inaccurate core beliefs about ourselves, and we numb ourselves with an addiction of some sort, whether it's alcohol, drugs, sex, porn, relationships, whatever. We escape our needs rather than trying to meet our needs because we don't think our needs can ever be met because we don't deserve to have our needs met. That was kind of a circular explanation of how we become addicts. Tami, do you have any thoughts?
Well, I often hear people going, I didn't have any trauma. So like when you're saying trauma leads to shame. And I think, I think some of the stuff that you shared, about your sister, and I mean, just, like, it doesn't have to be, the trauma, like, the thing, it's all those little things of like, and you shared some of those, like they're just not being bandwidth, or, or you're not supposed to have any emotions, like right. that is a level of trauma, but it's trauma, abandonment, neglect, abuse. I mean, there's something, guilt, grief, loss. I mean, there's something, that wasn't, it wasn't enough, now you got enough, you found it, and me too. I mean, we find maladaptive coping mechanisms. We find that, if we do this and somebody validates us for 15 minutes, okay, then we must be okay. And then we can go, but it isn't, that everybody has the big T traumas that, where you go, it's so much more subtle. And I think as kids, we just go, oh, that's how it is. And that's that, this is how everybody lives. And so it's more challenging to unpack all that. But I stand by that we all, as addicts, come into it with something that we're missing, something that we're not allowed to have. Emotion. Somebody was talking about, he had it was a partner and he had a great family. They gave him everything. And my first thought was they gave him monetarily, and thing wise, everything. But I wonder if there was, that you're just okay, just being who you are, and that you're allowed to have emotions, or were both parents so busy working to give everything. I mean, I don't know, I'm making it up, but that was my first thought, was the things, are nice, but that's not, that is not where we go, oh, we are inherently loved just for being who we are, and that my parents have time for me, or my family, or whatever. I'm valued within the family space. So we find these other not so healthy. But on some level, I mean, I've told a lot of addicts, thank God you had an addiction, because like their situation was so horrible, for them growing up.
Addiction or suicide at some,
yes,
and
yeah.
Addiction is how we cope with those, the feelings
yes.
that are that painful.
Yes, and so thank goodness you had an addiction, because while it's not working for you now, it worked for you for a time where, at least for now, you're still alive and you're here, and we can work on the addiction, but it probably saved your life along the way as well. So Yeah, I mean, it's so complicated, and unfortunately, I hear often too where people are going like, "I'm working with a trauma therapist," and I'm like, "You're not even, you haven't stopped the behaviors yet, you know, and until you have the foundation, you know, then working on those traumas just like triggers everything." So it's challenging to know how to work on those things and when, and having a really qualified support to do so, you know, makes a difference. But just digging into the trauma is like, you know, like I think that's right for, I'm going to go act out because, oh my gosh, that's so painful, and that's what I was avoiding. So
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for bringing up big T trauma and little T trauma. Big T traumas are, you know, your mother died when you were 3, or you were sexually abused at age 8 for, you know, an ongoing period, or, you know, I mean, really obvious traumas, you know, your dad hit you, or your dad hit your mother in front of you. And people, but most addicts, or a lot of addicts, don't have those big T traumas. I did not have those big T traumas. I had a lot of little T traumas. You know, my mother was overly enmeshed. My father was emotionally absent. Sex was something we never talked about. I have what we call sexual neglect, rather than sexual abuse. I wasn't taught anything about sex or relationships. Nothing was modeled, nothing was discussed. It was dirty. We don't talk about this. I mean, talk about growing up with shame around sex, and then to, you know, puberty kicks in, and you got no one to talk to, and you're more interested in boys than girls, which is a little weird, and it's no one to talk to, and, you know, it's the 70s in Indiana. My God, rural Indiana. You know, these are not.
if you're in rural Indiana, like it's still okay. So I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, you know, I mean, these weren't big T traumas, but they were just endless little T traumas that caused me to feel really uncomfortable in my own skin. And I still often wake up feeling really uncomfortable in my own skin. These messages, you know, the shitty committee between my ears still chats at me loudly sometimes. But I've been in recovery long enough to know that they're lying to me. What they're telling me is not true. You know, I'm not a horrible person. I'm not unlovable. Sex is not my most important need. It's not really, you know, on the list even, you know, but I have to reality check those. And that's a lot of the, you know, I mean, Tami and I both have long-term sobriety. She has it from her addiction. I have it from multiple addictions. I still have to reality check myself all the time. It's one of the reasons I go to meetings still. It's one of the reasons that I get so much out of just being in the drop-in discussion groups and the webinars. It is a reality check for me often, and I'm sure you identify with that too.
I do. Yes. Yeah. And I've said you for a long time, you know, I don't pretend like I'm forever going to, you know, not relapse. I have to do what I need to do to take care of myself, because I know people with long-term recovery that forget to do the basic things, and the next thing you know, they're going, how did this happen? And I'm like, I know how it happened. You quit doing the things that worked. Addiction is so like crazy about that. It's like, this worked really well, I've gotten into recovery, so let me stop doing that. You know, I mean, why would we do that? But we do. And so I always call it my insurance policy. If I do what I need to do today, I'm probably going to stay in recovery today, and I'm grateful, because that's a way better space for me to be in than listening to all those, you know, voices. I say the same thing. The scariest place is between the ears. Like that's, you know, like that's where I get into trouble, and I just don't need it. I don't want it today. I used to live in chaos, and I don't have to anymore. You know, I have the tools to use. I have people to call, you know, I have the things I can do on a daily basis too. And I do something on a daily basis for my recovery. So, you know, it is not like I just go, oh, well, you know, I can rest on my laurels. I don't, you know, because I know that my serenity and my peace is directly correlated to my intention for my recovery. So I don't take it for granted. I value it too much to be willing to, you know, to let that go. And like you said, you know, or like I said too, it's not the things, you know, my recovery has brought me a modicum of, you know, good things in my life, including, you know, like I like my car, I like my house. I mean, but it really is about the relationships. I have, you know, solid relationships with people who care about me and that I care about them. because I can now. I'm not just thinking about me and my, and my need to act out in whatever, same thing, multiple addictions, like multiple things, numb me out and got me escaping from dealing with my emotions. So
yeah, recovery is not, by the way, type some questions into the Q&A, and Tammy and I'll get to those in just a second. Recovery is not about cashing prizes. This is not a game show. Recovery, there's a great TED talk by Johann Hari called Everything You Thought You Knew About Addiction Is Wrong. And basically what he talks about is, the antidote to addiction is not sobriety, it's connection. And this goes back to our, these distorted core beliefs that we have, the shame that we have, keeps us from connecting in an intimate way. When we connect in an intimate way, we are much less interested in addiction. Hari cites Bruce Alexander's, we call it the Rat Park study. He was this Canadian researcher about 30 years ago. For a long time, people thought addiction was about a lack of willpower, or you just have no spine, you're weak, it's an inherent character defect, something. Not true. But most of that previous belief was based on studies of rats. Rats and humans, by the way, socialize in really similar ways. We are just slightly more complicated and taller versions of rats socially, which is why we use rats in a lot of psychological experiments. They're really similar to people. So they were doing studies of rats, and they would put a rat in a cage, and they would give a rat some regular water and some opiate-infused water or cocaine-infused water, depending on the experiment, and they would see what the rat did. Well, the rat, of course, went over and would do the drug water until it died. I mean, it would just keep drinking drug water until it died. And Bruce Alexander looked at that and said, this experiment is wrong. I mean, you're putting a rat in a tiny little cage with nothing to do, no social, nothing. Of course he's going to get high. He has got nothing else to do. So he created a great big park, a rat park. It was a great big cage with cedar shavings and little spinny wheels and tubes to crawl through, and rats of both genders, like 20 or 30 of them. And then he conducted the same experiment with regular water and drugged water. They ignored the drug water. They ignored it. He could take rats out of an addicted rat out of the isolation cage, put it in the rat park, and it would ignore the drug water. The cure for addiction is not willpower, it's connection. The rats would just start socializing. Now, humans are way more complicated than rats. We need to be brought back into intimate connection, and we have shame to deal with that rats don't have it to deal with. But I mean, really, it is about finding healthy connections in recovery, and that's what recovery is all about. That's why 12-step meetings work. That's why our drop-in groups work. That's why our work groups work. Is the guys bond. That's why treatment centers work, especially if you have guys coming in on a certain day of the week, like we do. They come in together, they bond, and then we work our way up to bonding with more important people, like our spouses.
One of the things when you're talking about the rat park thing, I'm thinking there are so many people that stay focused on, I want to stay in my little tiny cage and I want to just keep drinking my drug water. I mean, that's what continuing addiction is like, no, I want to continue living in that, and because they get scared, and the shame and whatever, but it's like, it's challenging to me. And I sit and watch, some people that absolutely choose, to remain stuck in addiction. They've been given information and tools to use, and they go back to that. And I go, at some point, like if you and I go back out, we are choosing it because we have the tools, so if you have enough tools to use, then it's a choice, for people who are stuck in the addiction. I mean, I didn't have a choice until, somebody, plucked me out of that cage and said, look, there's a better way. And there's other people, not just rats. So, I had the opportunity to learn different ways, and it was challenging at first. And I'm sure I didn't, get the whole rat park concept initially, but man, I sure gleaned onto there's a different way really fast. I was like hanging on to that, going, these people have figured it out. I'm going to follow what they do. And that's, that's what recovery is joining other people on the path. So there's a couple of questions. I'm early in recovery, 1 month. My wife is having PTSD. Absolutely, she is. We are on vacation and her triggers are less while on vacation. But is there anything I can do at home to help remove triggers or alleviate triggers at all? You not doing the acting, you're only a month in. You becoming glad you're here, but you like, I get this all the time. Addicts go, I need to focus on my partner. No, you need to focus on you doing life differently. And then your partner starts going like, oh, this person is becoming different. And, and there's support. We have a codependent aligned support group for partners today at 12:30 p.m. Pacific time. But there's all kinds of resources on sex and relationship healing.com, all spelled out, for them to get support because they need support. You need recovery. You're 1 month in. That's like abstinence. So great. You haven't done it for a month, but what are you doing? This is great, but are you, what are you doing? You're on vacation. You're joining this, are you joining 12-step? We've got multiple drop-in groups for men. Scott is one of the facilitators for our sex and porn addiction 101 groups. We've got level 1, 2, and 3. There's a level 1 starting on Saturday. The more you do as quick as possible, the more you are engaging in those things that build recovery. Scott and I talked about, we both, after decades, can still feel, those voices of shame and triggers and things like that. So the more you do to join recovery, the more she's going to see that. But of course she's got PTSD. So Scott, thoughts?
First of all, she's having PTSD symptoms. That doesn't mean she's actually has PTSD. The symptoms
That's
have to
true.
go for 6 months or longer before it qualifies as PTSD. But it is very, very, very normal for a betrayed spouse after learning about the betrayal to have symptoms of PTSD. Nightmares, fear of talking about it, inability to stop talking about it, doing detective work, this paranoia, this fear that you're going to do it again, all of this stuff. And you mentioned, triggers. Yes, she is going to be triggered, and she is going to be constantly triggered in the early recovery process. I'm glad it's less while you're on vacation, but if you drive past a billboard that she thinks looks like somebody you acted out with, she's going to be triggered. If you're watching a TV show, there might be something that triggers her PTSD or the symptoms. Just like those things might actually trigger you to want to act out. And just be prepared for you to have triggers, be prepared for her to have triggers. And like Tami said, you need to deal with your triggers. She needs support, and hopefully she'll reach out and get support, but you are not it right now. She doesn't trust you right now. You may be her husband, but she does not trust you right now.
Nor should she. It's been a month, and I don't know how long you were acting out, but I bet it was more than a month.
Yeah, so you cannot make it better. And by the way, if you say, honey, calm down, just don't do that.
Yeah.
Just don't. If she's having a moment, let her have the moment and say, I am so sorry I caused you to feel that way. That's the best you can do right now. So whether you're on vacation or at home, be accountable. I know that I caused this. I'm sorry I caused it. And be careful with the words I'm sorry, because that doesn't make anything better. And eventually, if you say it enough, she may get annoyed with you. So really, it's about taking accountability and, as Tami said, changing your behavior, visibly changing your behavior, becoming rigorously honest, telling the truth, telling it faster. But
not telling her in a do-it-yourself disclosure at home. So yes, yeah.
Yeah, disclosure, Tami. disclosure thoughts since you
Well,
brought it up?
yeah, like when you're saying tell the truth and tell it faster, like my concern was that it would be like, I just remembered this and I need to tell you this. And so she's going to get, the do-it-yourself disclosure. I'm going to keep telling you, the drip, 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 more stuff, so you both working with professionals, again, if you haven't already participated in a sex and porn addiction 101 level 1 group, one starts on Saturday, like getting foundation pieces. What is your relapse prevention plan, your 3-circle plan? What are you, what do you have in place that will help you not relapse? But please, I was talking to and this happens regularly, but I was talking to a partner again yesterday, and they're like, I need to know, and they wanted to do a fast disclosure, and I'm like, you don't understand that if this is not well done, you get 18 of them, and you getting this information. I deserve the information. Yes, you deserve to have truth, but you also deserve to have it done in a way that is the least traumatizing, because betrayal trauma is real, and partners are traumatized. So adding to that trauma, to me, I say it's just like digging the hole deeper that the poor partners have to dig out of. So I'm glad you're here. Absorb, listen, do recovery minded things, and it really does get better. I promise you. I know lots of couples, and I know lots of individuals, but I also know lots of couples who are on a very different path because of recovery. So there is hope, there is help, but yeah, please don't do like the do it yourself disclosure.
Yeah, death by paper cut. I just put a link to Matt Wheeler did a webinar on disclosure, just a straight up Q&A, which is going to continue in August. Let's take
Okay.
a couple sessions off. But the first video of that, I just put that link in the chat feature. If you want to learn about disclosure, watch that. It's a straight up Q&A that'll walk you through the process. Okay.
And I've shared on webinars before, but so Dr. Rob does a peer consultation group, every week, and it's other professionals who are working directly with this. The number one topic, it comes up almost every week, probably every week, but almost every week, is disclosure. So even with professionals, this is a challenging topic. So for those of you that think you can do the surgery at home, we don't recommend it. If you want good results and really a good disclosure, 92%, there was a study, 92% of those who went through a good disclosure found it helpful in setting the foundation for moving forward. A bad disclosure, again, it just makes things that much harder for each and both of you. So, okay, next question. Hello. How do I rectify the dichotomy in my mind between the guilt I feel for hurting my husband for cheating on him and the pleasure I experience during those moments of infidelity and intensity? Did you mute? I can't hear you.
Yeah.
Oh.
So yeah. Yeah. This is early recovery. Is we're looking back at, right, first of all, sex addiction and porn addiction, affairs, cheating, one night stands, these are all fantasies. These are not real. That's number one. So I challenge you to look at your moments of infidelity and intensity. Moments of infidelity and intensity, and see if they're real or not. The intensity is certainly real. But any actual real sense of pleasure or connection, I challenge you to look at the reality of it. Nothing is less real than an affair partner. I mean, honestly, nothing is built on, the two biggest fantasy things in the world are porn and affairs. Even a long-term affair, you're not taking out the trash, you're not doing the dishes, nobody's yelling at you for leaving your socks on the floor. The dirty laundry isn't sitting there for extra day. I mean, you're not mowing the lawn, none of that stuff. That stuff you do with your partner. An affair is dinner and maybe a show and sex in a fancy hotel room. I mean,
Maybe dinner, maybe it's just the
maybe
sex
dinner.
and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so it's just not real. So start rectifying what's real and what's not real. Start paying attention to the pain you've caused to your husband. Start paying attention to how much love and connection you have with your husband. Start trying to feel the pain of causing pain. Empathy is what we're reaching for here. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you feel guilt and great, you feel guilt, which means you want to change rather than shame, which means you feel stuck and like you can't change. But, you know, yeah, there's some pleasure and intensity when you have an orgasm and in those fleeting moments, but they're moments and they are an escape from your life. I mean, keep in mind what we're talking about with addiction is addiction is an escape. And sex addiction in its various forms is a fantasy escape. So, you know, try watching, you know, the Star Trek series or something instead. I mean, you know, you're still escaping, but at least you're not hurting your husband.
So Dr. Rob says addicts confuse intensity for intimacy.
Yes.
And what I was so struck by the moments of, and I think of that often. It's like, you know, addicts, it's I'm the fantasy of thinking about and you know, getting in the, you know, the zone or the bubble on the way to do whatever, and then remembering it's the recall of it. But the actual action is moments, you know, and the hurt that your partner is experiencing is, you know, 24/7. I mean, you like the nightmares, you know, everything else. So for you to have a couple of moments of, and the other thing I thought of too was like, I know for sure in my active addiction, like I had a little bit of fun and then I was chasing the fun that I'd had. Like I wasn't having fun, but I was chasing, because you remember that one time I had so much fun, you know, that one time, but then the rest of it was just trying to chase that and escape. And so, and then the guilt and the shame and everything else that went along with, oh my gosh, you know, I did that again, you know. So like I love what you're talking about, Scott, of being real, like really looking at, you know, was it really fun? And is that those moments of fun worth causing the person that loves you, you know, that loves you 24/7, might not love you like in the I love you always intensely right now because of, you know, of all of the pain, but you know, still has stuck with you through thick and thin. And you know, it's challenging, but the more you're able to identify what, you know, what you really are doing, or you know, that may shift things too. He also adds, I'm working on building integrity by attending Sex Addicts Anonymous meetings, making fellowship calls, meeting weekly with my therapist, attending the SRH, the Sex and Relationship Healing webinars, and reading books. How will I know my integrity has improved other than not acting out? How will I show up in my life differently than I have? You guessed it, I'm married and my traumatized partner is experiencing or is expecting to see big changes in me sooner rather than later. We have a treatment center for that. I mean, you know, that's because it takes time and we can compress it because, you
I mean, we just lost, or I just lost your sound. Am I here? Am I here? Can you hear me?
switch my,
There you are. I lost you for a second. Can you hear me?
yes, but I'm changing. Yeah, I'm taking I think my AirPods, I've worn them out again. So
Tammy uses her AirPods a lot.
yes, I have technology plugged in. But anyway, yeah, so I don't know where you lost me, but
Right at the beginning of your answer.
oh, okay. I'm sorry. I said, I'm glad you're doing those things, including attending the sexandrelationshiphealing.com I'm like, all of those things are good, but I said, what are, if you want faster, our treatment program, Seeking Integrity, is bad. I mean, we compress, Dr. Rob said, it's like doing 2 years of therapy. I think it's even more, because I think you go to therapy and you talk about what happened last week. And, this is like really digging into, the underlying issues. We want to stop the behavior. Absolutely. But, what are those, what is it? What is it that causes you to seek intensity rather than, than connection? So that's what we do. We don't magically fix everything in 14 days, but I do hear regularly from partners and spouses, after even just that short amount of time, that they're hopeful because they are seeing changes, in their loved one that, that came to treatment. So if you want the fast version, again, not a magical fix, but man, it sure compresses the time, and gets you a solid foundation faster. But Scott, do you want to talk to what are going to be some of the signs that you're doing things differently?
Well, yeah, I mean, I wanted to address, I mean, the question asked is, how will I know my integrity is improved? Well, just a little self-reflection, and, look at yourself in the mirror and you should know. I think the real question that you're asking is, how will my partner know that my integrity has improved? And that's a much more difficult thing. There is always going to be before the betrayal and after the betrayal. Always. And there's always going to be that dividing line in your relationship. It doesn't mean your relationship can't be as good as, if not better than, it was before. And a lot of relationships end up better than they ever were, because you're willing to become more vulnerable and honest and connected, but especially if this is a long-standing addiction, coming from your teens, which it often is. For you, it's about rigorous, it's about not acting out. Number one, stop the acting out. Number two, pay attention to your slippery behaviors. Have a circle plan, which, the inner circle is your bottom line problem behaviors. The middle circle is your slippery behaviors. The outer circle is healthy behaviors you can engage in. So do not engage in your inner circle behaviors. Pay really close attention to your slippery behaviors. And then you need to be truthful and honest and transparent, which is a big therapy word. Be transparent, not only, especially with your partner, but also with everybody. You have to be rigorously honest all the time. If somebody hands you an extra $5 bill and your change at the restaurant, you need to take that $5 back. And if your wife sees you doing that, she'll think, or husband in this case, sees you doing that, he'll think, oh, he just did something really honest. He's being honest with those people. Maybe he's working on being honest with me too. You're going to have to earn trust. And that's going to take a while. It's generally about a year before your partner really starts to trust you. But one day you're going to wake up and go, oh, I got home 5 minutes late last night, and he didn't look at me and say, you're late. Where were you? And you're going to realize, oh, he actually is starting to trust me again. But you have to earn it, and it's probably going to take 6 to 18 months, and that's if you are doing everything right. And it's an emotional roller coaster. You're on a roller coaster. He's on a roller coaster. It's not the same roller coaster. You're not riding it together. You're on one, he's on another, and sometimes you're just going to be on a different page, and you're going to be being super trustworthy, and he's not going to believe you. That's just part of relationship recovery.
And I was thinking of the 10th step, which is continue to take personal inventory. And when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. So that's the 10th step. So that means if you're doing the 12 steps, there's 9 in front of that. So if you've done a searching and fearless moral inventory, which is step 4, and you've shared it in step 5, I mean, those are the components that help us be able to identify when we are on that slippery slope, when we are not being completely truthful. Addicts we lie to ourselves as much as to everyone else, oh, that didn't really count, like, if I don't tell Scott about that, he's not really going to know. So that little lie doesn't really count. But it's like you're talking about the $5. I've been in that situation at Walmart during COVID, and something didn't scan right, and I didn't pay, I didn't, and I had to go back when, and you had to stand 6 feet away from I mean, I was just like, oh, but I knew for my integrity that I wasn't okay if I didn't do that. I just had to, I had to make it right, and it's the little things, it's the little things as well as the big things. And it's, if no one knew, I would still know, and then I'm not okay. And the more of those little things that I let myself get away with, pretty soon, then it just doesn't matter. So the slippery slope, but having the 3-circle plan, we're going to have a workshop if you don't have one, or if you need to tweak it because it's not really working for you. There's a workshop on seekingintegrity.com. It'll be a 2-weekend, 2 hours on 1 week and 2 hours on the next week, but it'll be an opportunity for people to, get a foundation of what that is and how they can create it, and then share it and get some input, to hopefully have a really solid plan, for this phase. I know circle plans can change, throughout recovery based on, what you need, but having a really good plan keeps you off those slippery slopes.
Yeah, I think that circle plan workshops is Saturdays, and it starts this Saturday, I think.
We should check. We should check on that. We will. Yeah.
Ask us some more questions. While we wait on more questions, I want to talk a little bit about denial. Denial it's a series of lies and deceits, and it starts inside, and then it starts coming out of our mouth. We have to believe the lies first. I mean, one of the toughest things for me when I came into recovery, I had all kinds of rationalizations and this behavior is okay for me because ...
It's usually because somebody else did something that.
Yeah, if somebody else did this, they'd be batshit crazy. But it's okay for me because just fill in the blank. And one of the big denial things for any married or partnered person is what she or he doesn't know won't hurt her or him. Oh, what a lie. Tammy, I mean, can you speak to betrayed partners before they know about the betrayal?
Yeah, well, and it's interesting. Some of them go like, I knew something wasn't quite right, but a lot of them are going, I thought I had this great relationship. And so it really is like they got hit by a truck, is so they're, and both are true. Like one is like, something, he or she was, a bit withdrawn, or wasn't, like there was some, like they had this niggling feeling that something wasn't quite right. But many of them, because I think addicts are so good at putting up that false front of, I've got this, I'm the perfect, spouse, parent, whatever, I'm able to navigate that, but it's so compartmentalized, and then discovery happens. Somebody sees a phone message, somebody gets a whatever, and then the whole thing blows up, and then the poor traumatized partner is either way is just rocked to their core. How could this person, and really most partners are not addicts, so they don't think like addicts, and it's really hard for them to wrap their brains around. This person says they love me, but they're betraying me, they're cheating me, they're having sex with other people, they're watching, whatever form of acting out. And so the betrayal, how could they do this? Because they wouldn't do it to their loved one. And so it's really challenging to reconcile that in their minds, that this is the behavior is a result of an addiction. It doesn't give an excuse, it's a reason, and we are still responsible for that. But partners are just, it's very challenging for them to navigate this in their minds. Oh, geez, now I can't hear you.
Again, I don't know why I keep doing this. Somebody has their hand up. If you have a question, pop it into the Q&A feature.
Yeah.
So I lost my train of thought.
Partners, we were talking about lies, denial. reconciling. Partners can't reconcile.
One of the things I wanted to say was, one of the things that's really difficult for betrayed partners to understand is this is not a referendum on them. um, this is sex addiction is not about sex. It's not because I'm not getting enough sex at home. It's not because my partner isn't sexy enough or gained 5 pounds or, doesn't do
Even though the
things I
addict
wanna
will use
do.
that as an excuse.
Oh, absolutely. These are all things we hear from addicts as part of their denial. Oh, she gained 10 pounds, or she spends all her time with the kids, or this is called this blaming, externalization. We come up with external reasons to make it okay for me to act up. But really what it is I'm acting out not because of you. I'm acting out because I feel badly about me. I have shame. I have negative core beliefs. Um, I have unresolved childhood trauma that created shame, that created these negative core beliefs. And I feel that I'm not good enough. If Tami and I are married and, and I'm acting out, I'm not reaching out to her and telling her I'm struggling with my feelings. I'm feeling unappreciated and unwanted and unlovable. I just go act out so I can escape those feelings for a while. But Tami, meanwhile, as the betrayed partner, often she'll sense that something is wrong, even in a perfect relationship, and even if or she just gets flat out blindsided. But either way, her almost immediate reaction after wanting to slug me is, "What did I do wrong? Where did I screw this up? What are my shortcomings?" So she goes into shame, thinking that she caused my behavior. And of course, as an addict, I will play right into that, because you're helping with my shame because you're taking
Yeah,
responsibility
it's your
for
fault now.
something you didn't, she's taking responsibility for something she didn't do. I
Right.
did it. And we
I
see
tell
that
partners
all the time.
often, there's nothing you could do or not do that was going to make the addict not act out. They're going to do that. And I was talking to someone again yesterday, and they talked about their loved one, when had a high level of I need to be perfect, which we see often. And so when they had an incident that was stressful because they didn't succeed to their level, they acted out. And I said, and that, this was a couple. And I said, your husband could have come to you and said, I feel horrible because I didn't succeed to the level. And you would have understood and you would have gone, it's okay. But they chose to do this other thing instead. They didn't even give you a chance to step into the space and help, soothe them in a loving, nurturing way. So it really is, I'm choosing to go do what I want to do.
What my addiction wants me to do.
Yes.
Because my addiction is in control.
Yeah.
One of the questions that was asked of Matt Wheeler in the disclosure webinar was, when I give disclosure, do I start with my current relationship, or do I go all the way back to childhood with my disclosure? And Matt's answer, and I'm 100% in agreement, is you go all the way back. You give the full history, even things that happened before my relationship with you. And one of the reasons for that, and Matt covers this in the video I gave you earlier, is betrayed partners. It helps them understand this isn't about me. This was going on way before he met me, or she met me, or I'm the third person to get cheated on in this way, or whatever, because partners do internalize blame, and kids, by the way, will internalize blame. And even when, and this goes back to, even when they don't know what's wrong, they know something is wrong. Kids know.
But don't tell them the gory details.
No, but they're little sponges. They know something is wrong. You're not paying as much attention to them right now. You seem disconnected. They're not getting their needs met from you because you're addicted and you're over there. Kids know something is wrong, and they internalize worse even than adults. And this is where shame starts. I mean, I had an absent addicted father and a mother who was emotionally up and down and just a little crazy. And I internalized that. I thought there was something wrong with me. And my sister did the same thing. She thought there was something wrong with her. And then we were getting messages that told us there was something wrong with us. So, and is it any wonder that we both have some adult life issues? So yeah.
But with kids, because we get this a lot too, like, it's okay to say we're really struggling. It's not
Right.
about you. We really love you, but as your parents, we need to work on these things. But unfortunately, too often, and it's typically the partners, but sometimes the addict will share, I've done this and betrayed your mother or whatever, but they'll tell the kids and they'll tell them your dad did this to me, and and then it divides the family when a healthy attachment. And gosh, even if dad has really messed up, he's still dad, and I mean, it's really challenging. So betrayed partners, and everyone, I encourage you to not let your emotions and your needs need to be met by your children. They just, even as adults, I don't want to, I don't want to have a parent's sex life,
Yeah, I think the Al-Anon website has guidelines for talking to kids about addiction. And basically the guidelines, and they apply here as well. Basically the guidelines are, tell them there's a problem. You don't need to be particularly specific. Let them know they didn't cause it, they can't fix it, and it's okay for them to ask questions and talk about it.
And it's okay for you to set boundaries on the questions they ask,
Right.
Well, what's wrong?
Right.
Like, it's just, we're working on some stuff, and we'll, but
Mommy and daddy are having some problems. We're working on it. But yeah, they need to know they didn't cause it. They need to know they can't fix it. And they need to know it's okay for them to ask questions and talk about it. They may not get all the answers they want, but the idea is for them to not feel shame about it. If you tell them, oh, don't talk about this, don't talk about it, there must be something wrong with it, I'm going to feel shame about it. So
yes. Yeah. And I'm not allowed to have emotions about it then either. So
right.
that's,
Yeah, that's the other one. It's okay to have feelings, and
yeah.
it's okay to talk about the feelings, especially.
Yeah. And hopefully even in the pain for both of you, you're able to step into that space, and assure the child that, that you love them and that you're doing the best you can as a human, you're doing the best you can to work on things and be different. So,
yeah. And children of all ages will have feelings about marital problems with their parents.
Yeah.
You could be 60 years old and having marital problems, and your adult children are going to have strong feelings about it. And you need to let them know it's okay for them to have those feelings. And if they want to ask you questions or share those feelings, it's okay. You don't need to give them the gory details, but
no, or, and I'm always heartbroken when it's, and now my children won't talk to their dad, and I'm like, dad could use connection and support. And we talked, like you talked about a little while ago, the opposite of addiction is healthy attachment. Well, now people that really love and care about someone are cut off because because he's bad. Well, this is a disease, and it's a reason, not an excuse. But man, if he had cancer, if he had diabetes, would it be, of course it's painful, but as adults, there is support for each of us in our own lanes. We don't need to to pull the kids in. So anyway, we are at time basically. So thanks all of you for joining us. Thanks for the questions. There's a betrayed partner group again today at 12:30 Pacific time. There's another one at 8:30 tomorrow morning. There's a men's group tomorrow morning. There's a men's group Friday morning. There are resources on sexandrelationshiphealing.com. And Scott will be back on later today with Dr. David Fawcett. So he's got two of them today. Thank you for
lots
stepping
of talking today.
Yes, but thanks for stepping in. I really am grateful. So I didn't want to cancel. And Kelley will be back next month. It's a great topic. I forgot what it was, but I was like, oh, that's going to be a really good one. So it'll be good. Join us then. So thanks, everybody. Bye.